The woman who made Sheikh Hamdan believe in love again. There is a moment in every person's life, after the losses, after the disappointments, after the specific kind of exhaustion that comes from loving people and watching love fail to survive the world around it, where the question becomes not whether love is real, but whether it is still worth reaching for. Sheikh Hamdan reached that moment. After years of carrying feelings he was not allowed to act on, after an arranged marriage that was never built on anything genuine, after watching the private life he had tried to build get dismantled by forces he could not resist, he reached the place where most people who have been through that much simply stop believing, stop trusting, stop allowing themselves to feel something new. Because the cost of feeling something new and losing it again has become too high to risk. He reached that place. And then she arrived. And something in him that had been closed for a long time opened again. This is her story. The woman who made Sheikh Hamdan believe in love again. And what it meant for both of them that she did. To understand what she walked into, you have to understand the state Hamdan was in before she appeared. He had loved someone deeply for years and been forced by his father's plan to set that love aside and enter a marriage that had nothing to do with feeling. He had watched that arranged marriage collapse under the weight of a truth it was never built to carry. He had made a private life and a private promise, and then watched both of them come apart when the political world shifted, and his father's vision for the crown reasserted itself over everything Hamdan had tried to build for himself. By the time she came into his life, he was not a man who had never known love. He was something more complicated than that. He was a man who had known it too well and lost it too many times to be casual about the risk of knowing it again. She came in through a different door than the others. That is the thing that people who know this story well always say about her. The women who had been part of Hamdan's life before her had come in through doors that were already complicated, already marked by expectation and history, and the specific weight of being connected to a man whose life is never fully his own. She came in through a quieter door, at a moment when Hamdan was not looking for anything, because looking had always ended the same way, and he had decided somewhere beneath the conscious level that the not looking was safer than the hoping. She did not try to reach the crown prince. That is another thing the people who observed this from the inside say about her. She was not interested in the title or the palace or the image that has made millions of people around the world stop and pay attention. She was interested in the man, the specific, complicated, deeply feeling, privately struggling man who exists underneath all of that. And because she approached him that way, without the performance, without the awareness of the audience that most people bring when they are in the presence of someone at his level, he was able to respond in kind, without the performance, without the management, as himself. The connection that grew between them surprised him. That much is evident from the period of his life when she was in it. The poetry from that time shifted in a way that the people who follow his work closely recognized as significant. Not the familiar longing, not the specific melancholy of a man writing about things he has lost or cannot keep. Something different, something that had not been present in his writing for a long time. A tentative, careful, almost disbelieving quality. The quality of a person who is feeling something good and is not yet certain that the feeling is real or that the world is going to allow it to continue. Hope written by someone who has learned to be afraid of hope. That is what his poems from that period carried. and it was unlike anything he had written before. She was patient with him in the way that only certain people know how to be. Patient not in the passive sense of simply waiting, but in the active sense of understanding that a person who has been hurt, the way Hamdan had been hurt, does not simply open because someone new arrives and seems trustworthy. Opening takes time. It takes proof that is offered without being demanded. It takes a presence that does not push but simply remains, consistent, genuine, unhurried, until the person being waited for begins to believe, slowly and then all at once, that the waiting is real and not strategic. She offered that. And it worked in the way that genuine things always work eventually, even on people who have spent years building walls against exactly this kind of arrival. He began to believe again, not all at once, not with the uncomplicated openness of someone who has never been taught by experience to be careful, but genuinely, in the specific way that second chances at belief are always more meaningful than first ones, because they are chosen in full knowledge of what the alternative looks like, in full understanding of what has been lost before and what losing again would cost. He chose to believe anyway, in her specifically, in what they were building together, in the possibility that this time the thing between them was strong enough and real enough to survive the world that had always eventually come for everything he had allowed himself to care about. For a period of time, it held. That is the thing that makes this chapter of his story different from the others. It was not destroyed immediately. It was not ended before it had the chance to become real. It became real. It was lived. It produced the specific kind of ordinary, unglamorous, deeply meaningful connection that most people spend their whole lives looking for and many never find. She gave him back something that the years of loss had taken. Not hope in the abstract, hope in the concrete, in the specific form of a real relationship with a real person who knew who he was and underneath everything and chose him anyway. And then the world came for it. The way the world always comes for the things Hamdan allows himself to keep. Not immediately. Not before the connection had time to become something worth grieving. But eventually, with the same quiet efficiency that has characterized every external force that has reached into his private life and rearranged it according to needs that had nothing to do with his own. She did not disappear easily. She was not someone who faded without cost. The ending of what they had was the most expensive ending yet. Because this time, what was lost was not just a person or a relationship, but the belief itself. The thing she had spent real time rebuilding in him. He has not written about belief the same way since. The poems after her are beautiful. They are always beautiful. But the specific quality that appeared in his work during the time she was in his life, that tentative, disbelieving, carefully offered hope, has not come back in the same form. It may never come back in the same form. Because the woman who made Sheikh Hamdan believe in love again was also, ultimately, the last one he believed in. And that is the cost of being the woman who restored something in a man that the world was always going to take away again. Subscribe to this channel and hit the bell. Every week I bring you the real story of Sheikh Hamdan, the loves that changed him, the losses that shaped him, and the truth behind every poem he has written since.